If you are searching for the If you are searching for the
Good evening, hello, and welcome to this special stream from MYT. Hope everything's well with you guys and it's all going well wherever you are. I hope you are staying safe, I hope you're staying well, and I hope you're staying home as well. So my name's Paul Nolan, and if you haven't joined one of our streams before, well, welcome. This is MYT, also known as Make Your Transition. And what we do here, we're an artist development platform and an online training facility, if you will. And we hold masterclasses like this every week on a whole variety of topics. And we've also had a lot of our friends on today. And obviously we've got one of our friends who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment, right here on the other side of the line. And we do masterclasses with the likes of Shadow Child, Detroit Swindle, and a whole host of others, as well as covering everything that you need to know in order to take the next steps in your life as a dance music musician. And that could be anything from music publishing, synthesis, sound design, finishing tracks, mixing, mastering, etc., and a whole lot more. So as I say, we do this type of thing twice a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday for our AAA members. And yeah, we are just having a ball doing that. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for all your comments and everything else. Also, thank you to our people who are streaming this with us tonight as well, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. So without much further ado, we shall introduce you to our special guest this evening, and he is none other than Mr. Tim Green. Good evening, Tim. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm not too bad. We were just saying before we started this evening, it's actually a really nice change, because we only sort of run into each other once or twice a year, don't we, at raves and stuff, and it's been actually quite nice to sort of spend a bit more time, even though it's online.
Basically be able to hear each other rather than, techno music blaring over the top sort of a thing, and pretending to hear what each other's saying sort of things. Mate, that's good. I'm just going to go to the bar, sort of things.
And that was the biggest surprise, wasn't it, that we actually got on?
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, I actually like this guy.
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there's got to be something wrong with him. That's probably why I like him. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, I'm from Liverpool, mate, so it's standard, isn't it, mate? Standard. So you keeping well, you keeping safe, and everything where you are, mate.
Yeah, completely locked down for a long time. Obviously, in London. For whoever doesn't know. It's not too different to me in terms of everyday life. It's pretty much what I do all the time is sort of spend most of my time in the studio, and I'm pretty much a hermit and don't really go out much because I'm just like, the sort of mad scientist in my studio all the time. I kind of like that. So usually it's broken up by gigs at the weekend, flying away sort of thing. But this time, obviously not. Everything's on cancelled or on hold, and we're sort of waiting and seeing, obviously, and it's fine. It's not, it's much more important things happening in this world right now. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but other than that, no, I'm all good, thanks.
No, good, and yeah, I mean, obviously not great to be a little bit sort of uncertain about what the future is, but I know a lot of DJs and artists at the moment are almost kind of enjoying their time at home a little bit.
Yeah, I mean like anyone, you just kind of have to take the positive spin on it, I guess. But there is no certainty for anyone. Whether it's music, whether it's any kind of a thing right now, it's so, as a strange thing as that is, you take a little bit of comfort in that, or at least you shouldn't panic about that for now, because it's like everyone's pretty much in the same boat, and there are people in a much worse situation than me right now. So in terms of career and everything, as long as I'm healthy and safe, and my loved ones are as well, that's my immediate worries, at least. So
no, fantastic, and I'm sure, as it already has been, it's been giving you a lot of time in the studio as well.
Yeah, which kind of makes me happy, and I'm really someone who doesn't like to be distracted. I'm not very good at having, especially like an external distraction sort of a thing from other people or the outside world. Again, like why I like to kind of lock myself away. If I have something to do or something in the back of my mind, I kind of have to do it, and then I can get on with doing music. So I kind of like to have a slate whenever I'm getting in the music. Otherwise, my mind's just kind of like not clear, So yeah, right now it's sort of, I mean, weirdly enough, there's a lot of stuff happening right now with my music and releases, etc. And so there's a lot of sort of, how do I say it, commitments of press and everything else, which I like doing, and different things propping up now, like this and various different other things. So it's keeping me busy, which is nice. But yeah, equally, I'm getting a lot of nice time to work on music, which is great.
No, great stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously, it can be a little bit difficult to stay in that lane of focus with everything going on in the outside world as well. So, it's good to hear that you're kind of, able to stay in that sort of groove and stay in that focus, because I think it really helps with, coming to terms with and also moving through the situation globally that we're facing at the moment.
Completely. And from a personal point of view, it's music is escapism, and I think for most people, and there's to be able to create that and go into that kind of a world, it's definitely a really, it's always my way of sort of daydreaming, let's call it, sort of a thing. It's my way of drifting off into the clouds and into the stars, and just sort of like getting on with your music. And it's a really great way to focus. I love exactly. From a meditation, I guess, if you want to call it that. But
yeah, totally. It's been the same for me as well, because as we said just before we started, I'm in the process of finishing off my sort of next tracks and stuff as well, and it's been a really important process for me, as well as like, I mean, I do a lot of exercise as well, so actually getting a lot back into running as well has really helped as well. Like, that's almost like kind of my meditative practice in a way. So between the two, they're really helping me at the moment.
Totally. Yeah, I told you before, like I'm always a swimmer, so that's that went straight out the window. As soon as the virus came along, I haven't been able to do that. So I've had to switch up the the exercising and everything. It's just quite different to me. It's not really something that I've done too much. I never really do any sort of stuff at home, but now obviously I have to now, and I have been able to. So it isn't too bad, but
that's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So I was kind of a bit torn about what to call this tonight, whether to call it like a quarantine stream or all day ice stream was another one that I come up with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think quarantine stream is a good one. I think it's reflective.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I've just seen as well, in almost a reenactment of that night out we had in Ibiza last year, Sebastian Ledger's just snuck in the comments there.
Yeah, I wonder. That was where was that again? That was
That was Amnesia last year,
you said
yeah.
that right. That's right. Yeah,
God, that was a
yeah.
funny night, though. That was a funny
Funny.
night. Yeah, funny
Yeah.
old night. But no,
It was
good to see two of my nearest and dearest in the scene all in one place. That was
totally.
good. That was
Totally.
good. So yeah, in terms of what we're going to go through tonight, then we are going to take a bit of a deep dive and a bit of a look into your latest track on All Day I Dream called "Vacation to Life."
Yes. Yeah.
So
Indeed.
why don't you tell us a little bit more about that and what the whole idea behind the EP and the track in particular?
Yeah, I mean the track. What is it about? I mean, it's quite hard to remember. They're quite old tracks, sort of a thing, and the original inspiration is hard for me to kind of, remember the catalyst at least. But it was. I remember always wanting that track to be something that's very musical. A lot of musical elements in it that could be kind of listened to in any kind of a setting, whether it be at home or, i.e., not a club setting, but equally work on the dance floor. And I find that's a really hard balance to get right because if you throw too much musicality on a song, it's overkill. And in a club setting, it's not what anyone wants to hear, really. It's it can be too much and can be quite jarring and it can put people off. And I think that there is a very fine line, which I don't know what that line is, but I sometimes I guess I get to a point where I feel like I've got a good enough balance, and in the end I was really happy with Vacation to Life. I thought it was kind of a track that did satisfy both of those kind of things. It's like really dance floor, definitely works, gets the crowd sort of going, but equally, you put it on at home and there's some really nice elements to sort of listen to, and hopefully different layers that are kind of, that kind of come out that you might not even notice or care about on the dance floor, but then when you actually listen to it, you'd be like, oh, I didn't realize that was there. And and again, maybe today I'm going to sort of showcase some of them. They might make up 1% of the track, but I know they're there, and to me, I like it. It's important to me.
We always obsess over the things that nobody else notices as producers, don't we? That's the kind of the deal, isn't it? That's what we sign up for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the great thing about All Day I Dream and what Lee's put together there. And as you know, like we met through All Day I Dream, actually, because we met at one of the London parties a few years ago. This is how this kind of whole thing started.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, that thing, he got such a good ethos and a good kind of direction and a good sound and everything, and an incredible collection of artists that I really sort of aspire to and get inspired off and share music with, and it's I don't know, I feel like it's the best sort of label and best platform and best basis to be able to freely write music for and write music on, like the idea and the perspective. But that might be equally just because that's where I am right now, perhaps, if that makes any sense. Who knows whether it is the best place to sort of do music for, but it speaks to me perfectly because it's something that right now, that's exactly the kind of sound that I'm really into. And I feel like it's a sound that I'm more happy with my sound right now than I ever have been, basically. So.
No, definitely, yeah. And it's definitely an evolution of where you were at, because obviously I've been to see you play at like Coccoon parties and stuff like that as well in the past, and it's just been really interesting just hear your sound sort of like slowly but surely sort of turn in that direction,
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it's something that I guess consciously I've had to push myself into that direction, but subconsciously it's exactly what I want to do, if that makes sense. It's not an easy thing to sort of change sort of sounds, and especially under one name. A lot of people would do an alias or something, but I've sort of slowly worked out that this is really what inspires me. This is really what the sort of music that I love and that I hear, and I wake up and I really want to make this music. And I hadn't always been that way. The music I was doing in the past, like I could do it and it was good, but I wasn't as hungry to sort of do it in different stages. Like we're talking, a long time sort of thing, but now it's something that I'm really passionate about. Like it's really this sort of sound is something that I really connect with. I just feel like I can be myself more now than I sort of ever have been.
Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? To be able to come with that authenticity as well, because you hear this a lot, and it's actually something we did a masterclass with Shadow Child a few months ago, and he said, like, right at the end of, because he was also known as Dave Spoon back in the day.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and he kind of came to the end of the Dave Spoon thing when he realised, like, well, this is not what I signed up for. And I'm not that person anymore. And in fact, where this sound is and this artist title or this project has led me, it's led me somewhere that actually I didn't really want to go that much, which is why he then changed into Shadow Child, which was a bit more of an authentic expression of who he was as an artist, you know?
Yeah, and you know, and I think anyone can understand that because it's, you know, we go through life very early on where sort of you get out of school, you have to choose a career, like, and you have to choose what you want to do. You have to choose a career path and a choice. And a lot of people don't know what they want to do at that age, and most people don't even know what they want to do later on in life, you know. So it's the same with all of us. Like when you're
I'm still trying to figure it out now.
That's what I mean. Like, you know, it's like, it's not a surprise, and you know, and everyone should be allowed the freedom, especially with the music, to sort of change styles and change sounds, and you know, do what they kind of want, and to experiment, really. You know, like maybe some people want to do certain things, and then if it doesn't work for them or whatever, you know, but it should be allowed, at least, I think.
No, absolutely. And I think as well, I think it's actually the artist allowing themselves to do that as well a lot of the time. Because one thing I do see, because as you know, I spend a lot of time mentoring up-and-coming artists in the scene. And there is this, like, huge desire, and I've spoken about this on a couple of podcasts, namely like the Your Music Industry podcast recently with Dan, where we were talking about, you know, there's this, like, huge urge on the part of new artists to fit in. Yeah. And they try and, like, shoehorn what they really want to do into a sound that's popular at the moment, and it doesn't quite work. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever had an experience of that or felt any pressure to conform as an artist at all.
I guess that's kind of what I hinted at a little bit before. A little bit. I haven't really sat down and psychoanalyzed my kind of history or whatever. I've thought about it a lot, I think, to get to this point, but more so how to get to a happier place, which I'm at now. But I do know that in the past, you know, I was able to write kind of like big room, kind of like bangers, and you know, for DJs, and I had a lot of fun doing that, and I liked doing it, and I got satisfaction out of it. But there becomes a time when, you know, I started to grow up, and I started to realize that it wasn't so much me, because I come from a real musical background, playing guitar and playing in bands and growing up with all different styles of music, and I wanted to draw from my influence like anyone should. And if my influence is jazz, I'm not going to start putting that into like big banging sort of like techno sort of stuff, you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't gel. And as much as I love that music, and I still will continue to do big room techno stuff if and you know, whenever I want to do it. But I know that really truly what speaks to me is what you draw upon your kind of like you know, your heritage and what you've sort of been brought up with and everything musically, and what I've been brought up with is a very musical sort of background, and I just want to be able to sort of express myself more through, you know, what my music, my sort of like musical background, I guess, you know.
No, great stuff. So we're here to hear a little bit more of that. So why don't we bust out into Logic a little bit? Maybe you could share the screen up and show us your Logic session for Vacation to Life, and we can start tearing it to bits, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're gonna have to ask the questions, because I'm not gonna.
Oh, don't worry about that, mate. I'm here for hours, mate. Don't worry.
It's interesting. What's not?
Oh, it's all good. It's all good.
Is the screen shared and everything? Is it working?
It is now. Yeah. If you can just minimize my camera, there you go. I can then just add you in like this. Okay, there you go. So yeah, and then if I do that, there you go. So yeah, that's perfect, mate. That's perfect.
Cool. Did you want me to, for anyone who doesn't know, shall I play the track a little bit or something?
Yeah, play a little bit of the track, just so to get the juices going, so to speak, and then we'll go from there.
It's loud enough, all right?
Yeah, it's fair. It's fine, mate.
Okay, great.
Nice, mate.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff. So yeah, I mean, just a great track, mate, I have to say, first of all.
Thank you.
And I think the first thing that kind of pops out is like the track that you've got expanded there on the Logic screen there is obviously it looks like it's a bounce of like a Prophet, right? A Prophet synth.
Correct. Yeah, correct. It's the lead part, which you didn't hear yet, but I'll sort of play it. Which is this, basically. Yeah, so it's from the Prophet 6 analog outboard synth, which you can't see. But it's like the new kind of like one of the new kind of Dave Smith Prophet synths, which I love. I use a lot. And did you have a question about it, or you want me to just talk about it?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of talk about it because I know the centerpiece of a lot of what you do is hardware.
Yeah. Well, it is and it isn't. It depends. I mean, if that was the leading question towards analog versus digital, I don't know whether it was, but it's like I use it really half and half sometimes, or in some tracks it's completely digital, some tracks it's completely analog, to a degree. But I don't care what it just, if it sounds good, it sounds good, and I use it, sort of thing. But I come from a background of, as I said, like musical sort of instruments and stuff. And my dad's a keyboard player and brother's guitar player, and I've always had old synthesizers around my house and reel-to-reel tape machines and everything. So I've always recorded analog growing up, and I still aspire to that kind of a sound. That's just a sound that I aspire to, and there is a difference between digital and analog. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but there's a big difference. And so, yeah, I like how certain things sound and the certain feeling that you get, and I don't think you can emulate analog. I really don't. You can get close, but I don't think there's ever anything that replaces it, in my opinion. So I use like the Prophet because I just love it. I love it so much. I use it a lot of stuff, and I use it mostly for leads and bass lines, actually.
No, great. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there is obviously going to be differences in a couple of different ways, isn't there, for, analog and digital, where obviously the workflow is concerned more than anything, actually having something physical and kind of tactile to work with. Is that a big part of it for you?
Completely, yeah. Like I said, like working all back in the day with reel-to-reel tape machines and everything, that's a real commitment when you go to record something. There's only so many times you want to re-record over tape or be able to jump in, like halfway through a take and sort of like play over a couple of bum notes or something. That's a hard thing to do. And so I like the idea of, and I'm used to it, again, as a guitar player, I'm used to like committing to getting the performance right and getting the take right and making sure you hit the right notes and making sure everything is a good performance, not just a MIDI performance. You know what I mean? Like, so this is like basically a performance. It's MIDI notes playing my synth from Logic, which you can see here. You can see it's just a repeated pattern. There's nothing special about it. But I am riding several different parameters on the synth, and it's also going through a pedal of mine, a reverb pedal by Strymon.
Oh, nice.
Blue Sky.
Yeah, they're really good, those.
Yeah, lovely sort of stuff. Actually, a delay. Oh, I got the delay one as well. It's called the El Cabistan. And so the synth was going through both of them, and I was playing around with them to, opening the filter up more and more. You can sort of see the sort of the what do you want to call it, the sausage of the wave, the thinning out of the sausage, and then they're getting larger again. Like the opening up of the filter and whatnot, and then playing around with the effects. So all the effects and everything are kind of hard recorded on there. And if I did it wrong, I did it wrong, and I'd have to do it again, sort of a thing. It's divided. It is all one take. It's it is all just take 3. So I've obviously done 3 takes of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I've cut it up. I might have done that because I know. I might have actually recorded it out from Logic and put it through my outboard compressor. Actually, I might have done.
Got it.
I'm not sure. So and then I might have changed the volume or something. I'm not sure what I've done, but I remember it being 1 take all the way through. But I think I did more than 3 takes. I think that's incorrect. I probably did something like 20 takes or something. But
I mean, yeah, normally. I mean, I'm the same. I mean, but I work totally in the box, to be completely honest. But I do takes for automation a lot. So a lot of the parameters that you're riding, I'm probably riding the same parameters in terms of things like filter cutoffs and envelopes and stuff.
Yeah,
and
so I'm guessing you are then, if you don't like it, are you going and editing it post, or are you just going back and doing another record of
I'm doing it again because
that's a great work.
I honestly believe that. I think, and this also stands out in the track now, we can see sort of behind the curtain of your process, so to speak. It actually shows just why your tracks feel so expressive, because this is something I see a lot, where a lot of producers will do it with the mouse and just draw lines in, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
I'm not saying
completely.
that at all. We need that. There's a place for that. But there's a balance to be had between doing something that's a little bit more performed and something that's a bit more human and allows us to potentially come up with ideas on the fly that you wouldn't do normally.
Yeah,
and,
you hit the nail on the head, because it's I don't. Well, for example, I got like a couple of drum machines, but I don't use them ever as in programming them and then have them play and then sort of record all of the audio. I'll probably play around with them, and then I'll record out all of the samples, and then I'll put it into the sequencer and have it really dead straight and timed well. I'm not a fan of like loose drums, So they're really, my drums are really syncopated, and I like them to be accurate. I want them to be really tight, and so. A lot when you have when the drums are such a front focus of this kind of dance floor kind of music, you want to have those human elements over the top, and I think the more human you make it, the more interesting it is, sort of thing. And in a lot of cases, in other sort of songs, if I had a synth line that was a bit more free, as in something that wasn't a repetitive, this is just an arpeggio basically. Like, as you can see, it's just like the same sort of. Like, it's just the notes just repeating, and you.
I have a question about that in a moment.
Yeah, if I was to do like a synth line with just playing it, I wouldn't use the MIDI. I'd just play it. But because this is repeating, I'm not going to spend like probably 3 minutes just playing the arpeggio on my fingers until they bleed,
Yeah.
So that obviously is syncopated, and that is in time, so that I can then obviously play around with the sort of parameters as I said.
Sure. So in terms of the ARP, is that something that you've actually manually written, like with, say, for example, like a mouse in the piano roll, or is it something that you've kind of generated with like a MIDI plugin, or what was the idea there?
I would have played it in. So that was an arpeggio that was a line that I played, because it is. It's kind of a strange kind of it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? There's a lot of bum notes. There's a lot of dead notes in there. Let me get rid of them.
So you've muted quite a few of them, yeah.
Yeah. So what I've done is played like a lot of different sort of notes in and a lot of different lines, and I've then spliced certain things together. I think, if I remember right, it's quite a long time ago. I can't remember, but I would have played that in. I don't like using the arpeggiator kind of like generator things most of the time, unless it's not the focal point of a track, you know what I mean? Like, this is more interesting because you can see there's like odd kind of notes on there, but it then does repeat, if that makes sense. So
yeah, sure.
See certain notes are repeating something. You won't be able to hear it because my Prophet isn't.
No, of course. No, it was just interesting to see the process behind this, because to the rest of us mere mortals, shall we say, we look at something like that and we go, wow. That looks quite intense to program,
I mean, I reckon if I just play it, you're going to hear the original audio, but I'm going to keep it on there.
Sure.
It's not that.
You'll get a guide.
Right, let's do it here instead. It's filtered. Is that kind of making sense?
Yeah, totally.
It's not that complicated.
Well, to you.
All right. Okay.
To you. That's why I said to the rest of us mere mortals.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't. Yeah, maybe I don't think it's too complicated, but it's not. It's not like a complete freeform keyboard solo sort of a thing. That's when it would really start to get complicated, I guess. But
yeah. But when you break it down into little sections, actually, the whole thing is like you say, it's fairly simple. It's just the call and response of it that makes it the most interesting part.
Yeah, I think it's probably it's probably an eight bar, like, I don't know. A 4-bar loop, I think, is probably what it is. It's probably just 4 bars, and then it just repeats itself, sort of thing. And then and it's just me, as I said, like, you can see the different sort of, like, you can see the waveform sort of changing and being affected.
No, sure, perfect, amazing. So I wanted to just ask you, because you mentioned about drums as well, right? And how your drums are really syncopated, and the tightness of it as well, because obviously you're a traditional musician because you're a guitar player and a drummer, right?
I'm not a drummer.
Right.
I want to be a drummer.
Okay.
I can't play drums. I wish I was, but no. I can whack out a beat, but that's about it. I'm definitely not a drummer.
Yeah, fair enough. So in terms of your approach towards drums, there's 2 burning questions I always ask people, especially in genres like this, where the end result is so sort of emotional and quite melodic and quite musical. Is like, the chicken and egg question of dance music, I like to call it. Like, what came first, the music or the drums?
In this, I think the drums.
Oh, wow, okay.
Back in the past, I always used to start with the music, but now, like, recently, I've started to do drums instead, because I ended up. I cared less about drums in the past, and now I care more about them. I'm more particular about them and how they sound and what type of sounds they are, and because I realize how much character they give the track. I know maybe that sounds odd, but I didn't realize that for quite a long time. I just thought, put a big kick over it and everyone's happy, But it's now. So I ended up, what I used to do is, like, just have a bunch of drums, let's say I've started writing a track and I've got the melodic ideas, like basis of a track, and I whack on some drums and it doesn't really matter. I after a while think these drums just kind of don't fit, and it just doesn't really gel, in my opinion. So I started then to try it, spin it around, and then start to write the drums first, even if it's like again, the bare basis of the drums, maybe not the whole filled out thing, but like character sort of drums, maybe some percussion and the groove or whatever, even without a kick, and then I'd write the music to it, because that a lot of the time would make me feel, okay, these drums are quite spacious. Maybe the track wants to be a little bit kind of more of an atmospheric vibe. Maybe these drums are quite driving, so I'm going to put something a bit more driving to it, etc. But I do remember starting with the drums. As I said at the beginning, like, I wrote this track wanting it to be for the dance floor, especially like a bit of a hit and musical at the same time. So I wanted to start writing the drums first, because I didn't want to have to go down that same trap that I've done before. I've done this a lot, unfortunately. I've done like whole tracks and then gotten rid of the drums entirely and just written a whole new set more than once within that same track. Like sometimes I did a remix. I've done a remix recently on Audio Dream, and I think I changed the drums on that maybe 2 or 3 times, I think, or something. And that wasn't because of what I said. I just wasn't happy. But it just goes to show that it's not something that I always am happy with. Is the drums. Melodic stuff is easy for me, but the drums I sort of find harder to do. But when I get it right, I don't touch it. I'm really happy with it, and I know what I'm doing. I think if that makes sense. But I think it's sound choice, I think, is probably what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like it's I realized how particular you should really be on what type of sounds you choose, like really the top quality sort of ones, or the the best sort of the best ones for the track, and the best ones that sit together, instead of just like picking like, oh, here's a snare, here's a hi-hat. Like I spend my time now really to go through and get the right ones. Maybe that's very obvious, and maybe a lot of people do that already, but I never really used to do that.
No, it's interesting. I mean, because I'm actually a little bit surprised, to be honest, because my approach to it is entirely the opposite. I always start with the music, and then I almost frame and tune and select the drums very specifically to complement the musical content.
Yeah.
And almost, I mean, one of the things that I've always said to people, and I've said it on many sort of masterclasses that I've given in the past, is the drums for me, in terms of, and I get your point about dance floor, the drums for me are a delivery system for the music. And I kind of look at it that way, so to speak. Not in like such a redundant or quite functional way, of course. They play a massive role. But I've always found myself to be like really musically quite compromised, because I have, maybe it's just me, I have very little discipline. And I end up just putting toms where I should just put my bass line. I end up putting drums where my riff's supposed to be. And then I kind of come to write a riff and I'm like, I don't even know where to put this now. There's like, I've filled all the gaps, you know?
Well, I think that's I totally get where you're coming from. I think I have a really good ability to foresee kind of whatever I'm working on. I can hear exactly what needs to come next, or I can hear what kind of music should happen. You know, hence why with keyboards or any kind of a musical instrument, I can chuck it down, you know, within seconds. It's not hard for me because I hear it in my head. Programming drums, I hear a hi-hat and then I have to search for it, or I hear a kick drum and then I have to search for it. You know, it's not as instant for me. So that's why I work that way round and spend more time on it. But I'm well aware of, once I'm, you know, I slowly start to build up the drums or something, I'd already start hearing. A drum might denote to me what key it would be in. I might hear one little perk and I'll be like, okay, I think I know what key I want it in. And I've always got that in the back of my mind while I'm doing it. So I leave room for what I'm starting to hear as I'm creating the pattern.
No, cool. So
for this, it was like, you know, I'm pretty sure it was these kind of like, I think it was something like that, you know, maybe that's probably what I started with.
Nice.
You know, just those kind of like little percussive things, and I built it up from there, I think.
And they're always a very kind of iconic and very classic All Day I Dream kind of element, really, aren't they?
Like, those kind of congas and stuff, you know, like the percussion, you mean?
Exactly that. And those congas and percussions, where did they come from in terms of like, where did you find those samples?
In my sample library. I can't remember where specifically. I rename stuff, or I might have. It might be from. I do a lot of. I save everything I do, and these might be. I think they're probably from an older track, perhaps even. I might have. I do this quite often. I keep everything that I've ever written, even if it's like 3 kick drums or something. You know, like whatever. As stupid as it is, I keep all of it. I just number all of my sort of tracks. Like you can see here, it's like this track was originally called All Day I Dream Beat 15. So I guess I've got a beat 14 and I bought beat 13 somewhere, you know, probably a different song. But you know, like every now and then I do kind of like what's, I guess, a spring cleaning type thing, and I'll go through a lot of these ideas which I don't know what I had intentions for them, but if I hear one thing, I write it down. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to extract that from the song and put it into a new session and see if I can come up with something with it, you know, because that sound is at least good. So I'm quite, you know, what's the word? Resourceful, I guess, with, you know, even with my old sort of stuff. So, so those things, I don't know, I couldn't tell you, but sample packs, like I've got a load of sample packs. I love them. A lot of people don't like them, and a lot of people talk about not having too many as a problem. I've got way too many, but I don't let it cause problems for me. You know, I'm very aware that when I'm searching through samples, I don't like spend 8 hours, you know, looking for that particular sample. I'm quite quick about it. I'm like, that'll do. Or if I can't find it, I'm like, move on to something else. Don't stress about it. It's not the end of the world, sort of thing. And I have my kind of like go-to companies or sample packs that I have, you know, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So yeah, just before we go on, we just had a couple of comments from people, and they're just asking you, could you just turn Logic's volume up just a touch, please, just so we can hear it a little bit better? That'd be great.
Yeah, this is obviously like not mastered, so.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's sounding a bit more. That's perfect, that, mate.
It might clip a little bit, but I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be fine. No, it should be fine. It should be fine. So in terms of like kick drums and stuff, then is it just because I can see you've got a top kick there as well?
Yes. Yeah. I've got like this. Yeah, I don't do this all the time. So sort of like got the groove from that and just a top kick. Which I kind of EQ and everything. I don't do that all the time. Sometimes it's just one kick. I obviously did it with this track. Kick drums I'm really funny about. But this I've used this kick quite a lot. This kind of combination. I've used it in a lot of tracks. I'm starting to get bored of it now. Some new kicks and everything. I go through phases of what's my latest favorite kick. I'm sure maybe everyone does the same sort of a thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of terrible kicks out there. Like I hear it in people's tracks.
Oh God,
This sounds really bad. I can't believe it, but there's some certain tracks that I don't play out because I don't like the kicks, and the song might be really good, but it hasn't worked for the track sort of thing, and it really annoys me because I'm like, ugh. And this is, like people, I get asked a lot. People are always like, oh, where do you get your kicks from and everything? And I swear to you, it's not the kick, it's the mixing. It's how you mix the kick with the tracks and how you write a song around the kick drum. That is how you get a good sounding kick, And there are certain tracks where I've just been like, oh, that kick is not placed or something, and it kind of annoys me. But it's not. It's, I guess you could call it clever production. Not clever, but like conscious kind of production. I think will get you the right kick, and then after that, equally there are bad kicks and good kicks, but I think I think a lot of it is down to how you mix and sort of produce that song.
No, absolutely, and for me, I've always promoted the fact that in my process, 60 to 70% of the time when I'm writing a track is spent just on sound selection.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You're right, because I don't know how many sessions it took me to write this song, but I remember writing most parts and the kind of like the string kind of, you see this like the string kind of like guitar parts and all of them samples and like the basis for it. I did all of that probably in like one session, I'd say, sort of a thing, which might have been, I don't know, 6 hours or something, I don't know. And that was a process of me finding lots of different sounds, lots of different ideas in my head, like putting it over the top and then slowly whittling it down to something like, okay, that's a really good hook, I like that, that's a really good musical sort of idea. And then it might have been probably 3 or 4 more sessions after that until I got everything together, including the synth and then maybe the vocal. And I think the vocal and the synth were the 2 last things I did for this track, if I remember rightly. So like the 2 main hooks, like the 2 last things I did. But I ended up writing the song structurally and sort of in order, sort of things. I sort of started with the first drop and then I went on. I didn't start with the hook and I didn't start with the main drop, and that all kind of came afterwards, which is quite interesting. Doesn't always happen that way.
No, great. No, it's great. Yeah, and we've had a lot of comments about the vocals as well, and we'll get to that in due course as well towards the end, because a lot of people are fascinated about how the vocals came to be as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I'm going to go back as well, because there was a comment that our good friend Mr. Ledger was asking, shaker left, shaker right, are they the same but panned? Or are they different sounds, or do they have a phase issue? Because, oh God, that's just such a Sebastian comment.
Sebastian thing. I think these are 2, thankfully. Yeah, so this is a really interesting plugin. I'll show you. There's no phase issue because it's a really interesting, like, I don't know if you've seen this. It's called Shimmy Strike. I think they're 2 different shakers, if I remember rightly.
Nice.
Yeah, they're 2 different shakers, playing slightly different patterns as well. I got 2 instances of it, one left and right. I think we're looking at the left right now. They have like loads of different, so you can have 3 sounds at once if you want. I just have it as the 2. There's a whole lot of different really awesome sort of sounds in here, but it's also a sequencer as well, so it's got the pattern. It's on a 16th basically. It's this one that we're doing. I've got see the volume, it's just in steps, so it's like as in volume sort of thing. So that would be like extra
Oh,
loud. But it's
nice.
different samples, so it's a dynamic kind of a range,
Yeah.
if it makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
especially
That answers the question. I've always been obsessed by your shakers for some reason.
you see that now that's these two are much louder, but it's a different sample, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you can hear that, if you can see what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's
I
a
hope
bit
you can
rougher.
see.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rougher sample, isn't it? You've got a bit more kind of accent to it.
Well, there's only so much louder you want to get with a shaker before it's piercing. Obviously, it's quite brittle depending on the shaker sort of thing. So it's a little bit like, this is a little bit like a dynamic increase in range, but it's also kind of like, a sort of a different, just a different sort of sample sort of thing. But there's multiple different recorded samples in it, so it's as human as possible, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's like it's a really nice sort of thing. I only got this kind of recently. I mean, recently enough, obviously, to do this song in it. But yes, to Sebastian, they are different shakers. They're coming from the same. It's the same program. It's the same shimmer shake thing. The one on the right and the one on the left. Just slightly different programmed patterns and a different shaker, I think, as well.
Well, this was worth me doing this masterclass with you tonight, just for that.
Just to learn.
Just for that. Okay, I think we're done for the evening. We can call it a night now. I've found out everything I want to know. You can all do one though.
But that's I don't use those shakers all the time. That they if you use them too often, you can hear it. It's the same sample all the time. Essentially, pretty much. There's you could see there's lots of different types of shakers and percussion you could use. So yes, you can get kind of and yes, you can experiment more with it. But when you want those kind of like the constant ones that I always really like in these tracks, I like that constant kind of like shuffle, I call it, sort of a thing, of shakers and percussion constantly happening within a track. So it's I just use loops sometimes, or sometimes I program battery. Battery's my favorite drum thing. Most of these things are probably battery, to be honest. Like it's the kick, whether it's these thuds or whatever.
Just as like an easy trigger.
I've just always used it. It's always been something that I've I think since Battery 1 first came out, I've always used it, and it's just where I put most of my drums in most of the time. Maybe kicks I'll just use as audio because it's pretty straight, depends, but I think even those are battery as well.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah. I mean going back to shakers for a second, that's definitely going to be something I'll be picking up, because I ended up being so sort of unsatisfied with the shakers I was getting. I ended up buying an actual shaker and just recording them in myself and actually playing them along to the track.
I mean, I've done that a lot in a lot of my productions in the past. I've done that. I've recorded in the shakers, but I've hit that same problem. It's the same shaker, so when I record it, it sounds the same no matter what I do with EQ and everything. So I've started to look elsewhere. Problem with samples, a lot of the time they're out of time, and then if you warp them, they sound naff. In my opinion, I don't think they sound very good, because I really have a problem a lot of the time with warping. So I always try, and then if you try to edit it, a shaker sample, it's a constant sound with a shaker. It's always when you're trying to cut that up and put that into time, you run into problems.
No, definitely.
You hear clip, a little bit weird,
Yeah, of course, yeah. And then the opposite problem, which again I hear in a lot of tracks, like if you have this kind of sensitivity, shall we say, towards kick drums, I definitely have it with shakers, where it's like my pet hate is shakers in tracks sounding like they've just been fired out of a machine gun.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
No, yeah, this is the thing, like there's so many varieties of it. It takes a lot of mixing with shakers and getting it right. A lot of the time I'll probably sidechain it with a compressor. I think these are quite quiet in the mix, to be honest. They're just there as like a nice kind of to give stereo field, the panned. They are panned left and right. It doesn't look like it here, but they are. I think they're panned within the application. That's why. So yeah, it's a hard thing to get right, but again, it's sort of trial and error, I think.
No, sure, absolutely. So we're getting a lot of requests to look at the guitar part.
Yes.
So let's have a little look at that, shall we?
Yeah, I'll play on its own, because it's not a guitar actually.
Yeah, it's a harp. You were saying, yeah.
Harp. I've put vintage guitar, but I don't know why. I'm guessing that's the one that people are talking about.
That's the one.
Yeah, this was a sample. Let's put it on a loop instead. It's a sample that I played in, which... Yeah, I'm playing that on the keyboard now. It's actually... it's quite a long sample. It's the same sample, but it's just cut up. I'll play the original. Is that the same sample? Or is it something?
Nice.
I guess these... I think these are different. I think it's the same harpist and playing slightly different takes that I've basically spliced up, you know. I've basically spliced it up and sort of and made my own kind of riff out of it, if that makes sense, and then whacked a whole load of sort of compression on it. So it's still going to play, right? Well, that will still work. Yeah, this is one of my favorite plugins.
Oh, it's one of mine
world.
as well. God, I love this thing.
Super, super good. I sort of play it with and without the reverb. Yeah, it sounds quite tacky. And then with the reverb, it's just bliss.
Yeah, is that the Valhalla Room or is it the Shimmer? The Vintage Verb. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. I love the Valhalla stuff.
Yeah, I really like it. It's nice. I don't really like any of the reverbs which don't. There's two reverbs I use. This and the Lexicon one, which is these ones. Has it got a name? These ones, it has got a name. I can't remember. PCM, I think it's called.
It's the PCM Native. Yeah, they've been around for a few years. They're brilliant.
Yeah, I really like these. That's the two reverbs that I use. That's it. I don't use any others. I used to use the ones in Logic, but I just got bored of it.
Yeah, for me, I actually think, like, as time's gone on, and this is no rag on Logic, I've actually found the reverbs, they don't really stand up these days for me. I think they sound a bit thin.
Exactly.
Yeah, I used to love Space Designer, and now it just sounds a bit, as I say, a bit not quite as lush as you'd like, really.
Actually, no, I forgot about that. The Space Designer one I do use a lot, but it's more for it's a convolution reverb, isn't it? So I'm using it more for the, a room, sort of a space, to give something, so that it's sitting in a room more like, rather than just, that's just like a big wash of reverb, and it's a real harp that's being recorded in a room, so you're getting a bit of a, natural acoustics going on. But so I will still use the Space Designer most of the time, not as a long reverb, as a short reverb, just to give it some kind of, as if it was just got a bit more life into it.
No,
that makes
absolutely,
sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's amazing how, like, the Saturn in particular has just really lifted it and added those lovely harmonics and just been really nice to it.
Yeah, it's my favorite setting is this one. It's called Gentle Saturation. It's the most transparent one setting you can get, but it's really good at getting volume. I mean, if people want to talk about getting volume without compressing stuff too much or whatever, saturation is kind of doing something similar to compression, obviously, but there's a really nice feature on here called dynamics, which you can push positive or negative. It's on 1.8 at the moment. If a 0 is what it usually be on, but that is kind of like it. That's basically putting compression on. Essentially, it's squashing and raising the waveform. You can see it there.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Little thing. Yeah. So I use this one a lot. It's my favorite sort of setting is Gentle Saturation, and it just kind of brings stuff to the forefront a little bit more, which I find super helpful in a mixing sort of situation.
No, absolutely, and again, it's another fantastic example of how me and you use the same plugin in completely different ways.
What are you using it for?
I use it for, like, there's the more sort of sound design, almost like sequenced mad sort of glitchy things it can do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I use that a lot, and I'll be honest, it became when I was working on Scene Delete with Sasha a few years ago on
Yeah.
his album, we were just putting everything through that thing at various bonkers settings with because you can split it up into various frequency bands and have one type
That's
of
amazing.
saturation on the bottom end and a different one at the top. So we were almost doing these LFO weird glitchy things on the top end, to get a nice crispiness, and then just destroying the bottom end of it just to kind of give it a real roughness. Because the whole thing on that album was just about, let's take something that sounds beautiful and just almost rub it with the harshest sandpaper, sonically wise, as possible. We were on a mission to make things sound really grubby.
That's what's so impressive about that plugin, that Saturn, because it goes to show that you can use it in such an extreme situation. And for me, I love it so much because of how transparent it can be. I'm using it as a mixing tool most of the time, and something just to sort of bring out a little bit of presence, I guess, or something.
Sure.
And it just goes to show how great it's one of my favorite plugins for sure.
No, absolutely.
All of the Pad Filter stuff is incredible.
Oh, fantastic. I love the EQ. I love I use the multiband compression quite a lot when I'm mastering as well, which is just fantastic, just for ironing out those little kinks at the right point of the track. It's almost like I don't really necessarily consider it to be a multi-band compressor. I almost think about it like a dynamic EQ.
Yeah, I guess it depends, doesn't it? Because it's got, though, depending on how many bands you've got, but each one is so flexible, isn't it? You can use it in, you can blend them in so many different ways. It's crazy, the Fab Filter stuff. It's so, again, you can just use it so subtly, which is super nice. I actually, to do the sort of the DJ master of this, I'm pretty sure I probably put it through the Fab Filter stuff, the limiter I use all the time, and probably the multiband.
Yeah, sure, amazing. So the other most requested part of this track was the vocal.
Yes.
So let's demystify that a little bit, shall we?
This was something I can't remember where I got it from, but where did I get it? I can't remember where I got this from. It's nothing
from a pack.
Yeah, it's from a.
I have to admit, there's been more than one comment that I've had on this. A lot of people were speculating that it was from Orbital.
No, I mean, not knowingly, I didn't sample Orbital. I'd never do that.
Yeah, you'd know that, right?
Yeah. No, I mean it comes from. Where did it come? I should have done my research. I should have gone back into my old files to work out where I got these from. It's 100% a sample pack of something. I can't remember where I got it from. Dry is just pretty simple. It's like...
Yeah, it's a standard thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, this was actually, I remember this vocal was from a different track that I was doing. I had never finished that track, and I was like, I need a vocal for this song. I was doing that spring cleaning thing, found this, and I was like, do you know what, that could be perfect. I think I've probably pitched it. This has probably been, it says Ableton vocal dry bounce. That's, I don't know why it's called that, but I'm pretty sure I've put this through my outboard compressor as well. So I've probably compressed it a little bit to keep them consistent. I mean, I don't know what else to sort of say about it. I mean, I have loads of vocals like this. You can find them easily, if you just go into any website or sample place or whatever and just type in, I don't know, hippie vocals or something. I don't know, whatever you want, like choir something, or I don't know. I mean, who do I usually go for samplers? Sample Phonics, do you know them?
I do, yeah, they're excellent, excellent.
And their noise
brilliant.
thing.
Brilliant. I've been using that for a while.
Yeah, that's really great, because I don't know if maybe people don't know what it is, but I'll explain. It's like it's a online platform which you subscribe to, yearly annual sort of fee, I think. And you're given access to all of their sample libraries, which they're just constantly adding more and more to. But it's got a plugin which you put into your DAW, and then you just open that up and you just search. You can just type in whatever you want. Like you want a flute sample, type in flute, and if they got a flute sample, there'll be lists and lists of them. You scroll through to your heart's content and find them, and they're really good samples as well.
They're fantastic,
and they're getting better. There's some ones which are just getting really beautifully recorded. I'm pretty sure that the harp, the guitar thing is from Noise, or Sample Phonics. So it's the same company, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think they've actually changed the name over now to Noise from Sample Phonics, but they were known as Sample Phonics for years, and I've been a huge fan of them as well. I've been using they've got one sample pack that's just been killer for me for years, and it's a household percussion. And it's like basically people tearing bits of paper and tapping on tables, and on one of the tracks on my Bedrock EP last year, the hi-hat was actually somebody squeezing a water bottle.
That's the thing. I love this. I do that a lot. I make a lot of my own samples. I make a lot of my sort of like weird sort of things. Every time I travel, I take a kind of like high quality dictaphone or whatever like record or something.
Yeah,
I'm recording stuff all the time, where even it's like bird noises or background sounds or whatever, and I put it into tracks. Like I'm always doing stuff like that, and I'm making sounds out of found sounds or whatever you want to call it. And that just adds something unique and sort of interesting most of the time. Has that answered anything about the vocal?
That has, absolutely. And the interesting.
I think it might be from that Noise platform, the vocal, because I'm pretty sure that harp guitar thing was as well. So I'm guessing that vocal might have been from there, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Again, I think I took that from another track of mine, and I don't know where it came from.
I mean, I think that where the vocal came from is maybe less important and less interesting than the process of selection and what made you select it, because people are always going to go off and do their own thing, right? And even if they did locate the same vocal, they're probably going to do something completely different with it.
Yeah, that's what's great about it. I mean, it was I'm not a fan. It's quite hard with vocals. Again, it kind of goes back to what I said before. Putting too much musicality in a track most people don't want that. Like when you're on the dance floor, you want to do it. A vocal like this is also a really fine line, because it gets a little bit into that ethereal kind of floaty kind of a sound. But I guess it's kind of I've done it in a kind of a good balance, because there's enough kind of like rhythm and stuff sort of happening in the track that sits on top quite nicely. It's and that's why I chose this vocal, and that's why I like it. It's a very clean vocal. When you listen to it on its own, it's quite. And there's kind of and then over the top, obviously you've got the contrast, I guess, of the music. I like vocals as an instrument as well. Like I love making chords with vocalists, or several notes layered on top of each other or something. And then a choir. Obviously, I love sounds like that. And this person is not singing, particular words that denote a feeling, or it's just a sound on top. So that's why I chose it, because I like it as an instrument more than anything.
No, yeah, and I think your track record as a producer very much speaks to that. Because another one of my favourite tracks of yours was For a Memory.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I'm playing out now, I still have to go to myself, dude, you've been playing this for 3 years now, stop. And I still play it every set.
I still love that song as well. Like that's one of my sort of proudest kind of tracks that I've made. I don't get bored listening to that song whatsoever. And it's very much kind of like I guess the beginning of me really finding the sound that I'm happy now.
Absolutely.
Because that's completely within line with what I'm doing. And obviously Lee Burridge released it as well, and it's it's like one of them. And it's funny, that track, I tell people this a lot, but me and Lee have known each other for I don't know how many years, many years. You've known Lee longer than I have, but we've both known him a long time.
Yeah, we're both giving our age away right now.
Yeah, let's stop. And 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 I've known him for a long time, and we've done music together. We kind of like produced a little bit together, and I've done remixes for him and stuff, but I'd never released on All Day a Dream, and I've obviously known it right from the beginning and seen it grow and everything. And we've always talked about, whenever you do that track, Tim, like send it to me. And I'd never done it, and until I'd written For a Memory, and wasn't until I wrote that track, and I was like, and finally sort of told him, Lee, I've got this track, and this is the one. I said, this is the one that I've finally written, something that I think is going to be, that you're going to like, and that's going to sort of like fit the sounds, etc. And so he and I gave it to him, and he was the first person to play it out. I wrote it, I finished it, and then he played it out in London on a boat. I think there's a video of it actually, and he played it out, sort of thing. So
I actually think he played it at the All Day I Dream in London that we met the same day, I think. And yeah.
I've got a video of that as well.
Yeah.
That was that video is ridiculous. That time was ridiculous.
That was a ridiculous party. That was ridiculous.
Yeah. The old 3-3 as well, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, the old one. Yeah, before it was updated for obvious reasons. But yeah, phenomenal. And the reason why I bring that track up in particular is because it's that vocal as instruments, and how you use that vocal and cut it up rhythmically was one of, apart from the orchestral strings, that was one of my most favourite parts of the track.
Yeah, totally, yeah, and it's again, I think that's like I think the vocal from For Memory was an Indian vocalist, and I can't remember where I got that from. It was it's a sample pack. I'm assuming, but I can't remember. But it was, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it was an a cappella, but like, I liked the sound of the voice, but I wanted it to play a melody. Again, I thought of it as an instrument, so I cut it up and I made the notes that I wanted to do, and then just kind of spliced it together to that repeating kind of melodic line, I guess.
No, amazing. And I think, as I say, just seeing the vocal and how sort of important and significant it is to the track, and seeing that it is, from a pack, and how you've built all the other elements around it and how it fits in, it shows that sample selection is absolutely everything.
That's 100%. That's that's a lesson that I always sort of like tell people more and more, is that it's the most important thing. It's what I feel like I'm doing is songwriting, and when people maybe want to know about production, to me, you will have better production when you're a better songwriter. And I know that might be scary to a lot of people, but it's the truth. It's about really making sure that you're writing the best part for those best sounds. Like, you can't polish a turd, like you have to start off with good kind of elements first, and you have to get the good sounds, which is why me having analog equipment or anyone doesn't make me write better songs. I just gravitate towards that sound. Someone can write a better song than me, just using digital or just using analog or whatever. It just comes down to, picking the right sounds that work and that work together. To me, that is production. That is, for me, how you sort of produce, is knowing where to put things. And that takes a long thing to do, and we're arrangers. If you're writing a song, we're arranging songs. So you're technically an arranger as well. It's to be a producer is a big task. There's a lot, as well as mixing, there's a lot of different things you can do. And so you make your life easier from the beginning if you choose the right sounds. Like, spend it doing right. Like, find the sounds that just, make you feel like that's a good sound. I've got thousands of vocal sort of sounds and thousands of different sounds in my library, but I don't use them because they're not right. But one day I might have a track where I'm like, okay, that is the right kind of sound, and I know when I hear it, like, that's something that I can't sort of teach or pass on, unfortunately, or sort of convey. I just know when I hear a sound, what it's going to do to the track. Like, I don't even need to listen to. This is funny because I noticed this when I'm with my friend Justin Machakos in New York, when we produce together. When we're searching through sounds, he likes to have the track playing to listen to the samples that we're listening to see how it sort of sounds within the track. I don't need to do that. I can just, walk away from the track and just go listen through to sounds, and I know exactly when it's the right one that's going to work. And it's just something that I don't know. It's just something that I can sort of do. But really the takeaway is just, I think it's spending the time to get those the good quality kind of sounds. I think it's and the sound. I guess maybe it's like, if you can try and get in your head what you want and what your goal is, then just don't settle until you can find that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's so true, because like a lot of people like pass comments when they see me do like live production sessions, or I put masterclasses up and people go, oh my god, like you make it look so easy. And it's like, well, you're seeing 20 years of basically like dicking around here. And it's when the sounds are right and you've got that developed sense. Like I always say to people, like when I mentor them, the one thing I can't do is reach inside your brain and turn that switch on that makes you understand what the right sample is. Like, because it's different for every single person. But when you get it right and you understand that is like intuitively the right sample to select, then the tracks can write themselves. The tracks almost mix themselves. And it does look simple because you've used the exact right elements in the exact right spot at the exact right time.
I mean, look at this. Like, this isn't stuff that's going on. It's mainly drums. That's the track. Like, there's nothing else being hidden. There's even stuff that I've muted that's not even being used. It's like there's not a lot going on, and I've literally got one bass line. That's it. It's one plug-in. The bunch of drums, they probably look the most complicated. The main synth, those kind of like flourishes of the guitar and everything, the vocal, and then a piano, piano chords, which I played and sort of recorded, and that's it. There's some effects and just good arrangement, and and working with making sure that I bring out those kind of elements, like using the synth line to sort of flow and to build, to peak, and to sort of bring out that sort of track,
No, absolutely. And again, like you mentioned with the songwriting element, I mean, how much do you think your knowledge of being able to play guitar, play instruments, and music theory, how much does that play a role for you? Do you feel like it's an essential part of the production process or the writing process for you?
I guess for me it is to achieve what I want to do, if that makes sense. Like, I set myself really high standards, and I'm not someone now, especially as I said previously, from where I've come from, I'm not someone who wants to just bang out some tunes. Like, I'm trying to sort of I get an expression across, and it's me. Like, this music is an extension of my personality and myself, and what's going on in my head, and emotions and everything. So I want to express that, and to do that is not so easy, and to do it right. So the music, being a musician and like learning all this sort of stuff and growing up, is massively helped, because I draw upon all of my influences, which is a really wide range of stuff, and everything's kicking around in my head at some point, and something will trigger something and make me think, okay, there's that song by whoever, like Paul McCartney or something that I really love, or Wings or whatever, that makes me think, that reminds me of that. Like, and I'll go and listen to that song, and then I'll be like, they use a harpsichord in this or something. Maybe a harpsichord will work, and then it kind of like just goes on from there for me a lot of the time. I'm quite open to trying different things.
And does that mean you're listening to a lot of other music when you're not in the studio in order to try and trigger those types of thought processes?
I do both. I just naturally I listen to all different types of music all the time. It's really I think it's really important to not only listen to house music or techno music or something. There's so much music out there, and if you only listen to one thing, I think you become very it's kind of narrowed and it's a bit too particular, and I think drawing upon influences from different sort of sounds, from different genres and different styles is much more interesting.
No, it is.
But equally, I listen to, a lot of like artists that I love and other tracks, and I get inspiration from them equally as well. It's kind of a balance, I guess.
No, totally. So just to round off on a couple of elements here, getting back into the track.
Yeah.
The bass is something that a lot of people are quite curious about, and how you went about that.
Yeah, that was I think this is. Oh, look, I think it's the same sound they use for Forward Memory.
Oh, I love this thing. Razor's so good.
I have. I don't always use plugins. Like I get them. I don't know. Maybe I'm using half and half. I'm not sure. I feel like I use more analog for bass lines, but it depends on the type of bass sound that I want. And this one I wanted a bit more kind of like in the front, and digital just kind of cuts through quite, really well, sort of thing. So I sort of found this sound. I'll just play it as well. It's really simple. Like this, I think it's like 4 notes or something. Just repeating.
And it's so round, that bass, isn't it, as well? It's got that really lovely, almost like a plucky kind of edge to it, so it cuts through the mix really lovely.
And it's driving so much of the song, because when you take it out, that's all that's happening in the song. It's literally just a bass line in this sort of thing. There's it's a really big difference. And it's it looks like it's really I've really heavily EQ'd it as well.
Yeah, just rolled a lot of that top end off.
Yeah. I guess I'm side chaining it as well.
Yeah.
Yes. About minus 3 dB sort of a thing. Yeah. I use the Logic compressor a lot. A lot of people don't like it. I love it.
Oh,
I really love it.
I love it as well, actually. And a little tip is, the distortion.
Oh my god, the clipping's incredible.
They flip it onto soft, and it's one of the best gentle, like we were saying with Saturn before. It's one of the.
I don't get it, because soft is really hard. It's and then clipping is soft. Like the soft setting in this distortion is really like brutal.
Yeah,
it's great. Like the clip one is soft, I found anyway, but I don't know why. But they are great. Yeah, they're brilliant. They're really.
Yeah, I love it. It really just, again, it lifts everything. But as you say, it's quite vibey, shall we say?
Yeah,
to say the least.
Exactly.
To say the
I
least.
don't like a big fan of the vibey plugins and stuff. I don't use them. If I want vibe, I will record my stuff out and into my like analog equipment. You know what I mean? So that's why, like going back to the Saturn saturated plugin, that I like it, because I like the clean side of it. I like to use stuff that's transparent, because I've probably already made these sounds how I want them to sound first, and then I'm just using them as mixing tools, I guess, a lot of the time more often.
No, it's interesting. So obviously the other two major aspects of this track are the bells. That's sort of lovely sort of like bell arpeggio that you've got sparkling as that track drops in.
Is it this one?
That's the one.
I guess that's just some reverb. Yeah, bells reverb. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, super curious about this.
Yeah, that was. Again, I should have done my research first. So long ago, I remember. I've got like 20 tracks on the go right now, and I remember them, but I can't remember these ones because they're old. I'm pretty sure this was a sample that I've cut up and put into. Actually, I could be wrong about this, but I think it's a sample that's actually very slow. I think this is the wrong BPM, and I've sped it up and then cut it so it's in time. I think, if I remember rightly. I could be wrong. Because it's really tight. You can hear how tight it is, and I don't think anyone can play those bells that fast. Not that well. So it's kind of So I think it's a sample that I probably found but cut up to get that kind of. It was probably an entirely different sample before, and then I've sort of cut it up and made it kind of like a bed, I guess. Because it's not too intrusive. It's just kind of a bed sort of a sound in this track.
Sure. No, but again, it's such a, like you were saying, in that element, that drop what makes that drop really work is just how simple it is and how
Yeah.
unobtrusive it is, and it's not trying too hard. It's just, here are the elements, they're great. You know, they're not trying to blow your brains out like a lot of tracks do.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with those tracks. And I used to do those tracks a lot more, but I think it lends to the fact that I'm putting a lot of musicality in my songs now. That if I had a lot of musicality and then all the fanfare over the top, which I still do like, but you know, like if it was just the fanfare and a lot of musicality, it's a little bit too much for the ears to take, I think. So you kind of have to, like you have to take each track and situation as it comes, I'd say, and sort of work out what you think is best. And that's a really hard thing, and that's something that I've taught myself how to do, is basically having a perspective of your own music and an outside perspective, i.e. from yourself. So being very analytical and being able to sit back and take a perspective of like, okay, if I was listening to this for the first time, or if I was listening to this in a club, would it annoy me if it did this? Would that be too intrusive if I did that? Is this going to get me dancing? Or, you know, that kind of a thing. And it's easier said than done, but it's something that I've managed to sort of like learn to be able to do more and more, you know, I think that helps the writing process.
And you also have when you are on the road, you do have the opportunity to road test things to see whether or not they are getting the reaction that you want, first and foremost.
I do, but mate, I get it right. If I finish a track, it's pretty much done. The things that I'll change will be a mixing thing. I'll play it out and then I'll be like, oh, actually, the kick isn't loud enough, or the bass needs to be a bit better, or whatever. It's not like I test it out. I'm like, oh, I need to rewrite that drop. You know what I mean? Because I'm very careful to play anything out until I'm really confident with it, and I'm very careful to play any of my music until it's finished. Like even Nick, my manager, he hates me for it, but I won't play stuff until it's like absolutely done, and I thank him for his patience. But I'm just like that, because I don't like to convey something until it's done the way I want it to be done, you know. Yeah. And when it's finished, I'm like, that's my song, that's how I want it to be.
No, sure.
And change, you know.
No, exactly. So also the orchestral part of it is always something that I'm really interested in your tracks, because you know, your tracks, I'll be honest, like For a Memory and this, they sound like you've actually been in the studio with an actual orchestra to me, because they sound so real and so like there's such a lovely texture to them.
I mean, what is this? I think this is just a pad. I don't know what it is. There's For a Memory strings, so again, like I've used the same, but this is simple. Like I don't think this is one line. That's one line. That's from a plugin.
Nice.
Just a pad.
Yeah. Here's me thinking it's some super high end, like Spitfire or like Hollywood strings type thing, you know.
I do use that, but I haven't in this. If you hear in any of my other tracks where it's kind of like, you know, a quartet or something, or like string arrangements, that is Spitfire. I'm always using Spitfire on that. But on this one, this is just like one of them beds that sit underneath, and it stays. You can see it pretty much stays filters and until you get to the drops, the drop downs, the breakdowns. So that's when it kind of opens up and then disappears again for everything to kick back in.
No, totally. Yeah, totally. And again, what's also really surprising in the track is just, again, the simplicity and the beauty of the arrangements. And also, there's not a huge amount of automation going on either.
No, I don't. I'm not a big fan of too much automation. Again, it's that, and I think maybe it's not the same thing. It's that analogy of like, you can't polish a turd. Like if I'm having to over automate, then there's something wrong with the part, you know. Like if I'm having to do something flashy to try and make this part interesting, it's not interesting, you know. Like it doesn't interest me. Like my biggest thing is like to be able to finish music. If it takes me too long to finish a song, it's because I'm bored of it, and if I'm bored of it, then no one else is into it, you know. So
very true.
Again, it's like selecting them parts at work and putting them in the right place and making them work. And I mean, how much? Oh, well, there you go. There's more automation than you thought. Some,
but still, it's not like, you know, vast swathes of like, you know, extreme runs up or down, is it? You know, it's not like it's 15 different things all been automated live?
I don't. I think maybe that goes back to me writing this kind of music now. This is the kind of music that I'm into, which is more musical. I think of myself as a songwriter more than maybe a dance producer or whatever, because I'm expressing myself, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. I think of, again, having like kind of like a main focal point of a melody and chords and stuff. It is quite musical, whereas maybe like a techno track or something it definitely can work great with a lot of automation, because you're really kind of building with textures and sounds and automating different things, and it's quite a different game really in that sense. So so maybe because I'm writing with a lot more kind of musical elements and more like a song, and I'm thinking in chord structures and everything else and melodic elements, that you would just play it. You just play the parts and let them play and let them gel with each other as if it's a band. That's kind of the way that I think, where that kind of work in my mind anyway.
Yeah, totally. And it speaks to the power of effective arrangement, where and I've always said this, that no matter how much automation you do, if the elements arriving and leaving aren't happening at the right time and they're not moving the track forward, then it's not gonna rescue the track at all.
No, that's it. That's the thing. No, that's it. But again, it just goes back to what I think. Trying to give any kind of advice, I think it really goes back to what everyone wants to achieve from their music. Like, it depends on what type of sound that they want to, what they're trying to go for. If you want something that's like a track with like thousands of effects in it, then great. Go for it. And I love tracks like that. It's just this particular track, and I think especially the kind of music that I'm writing right now is just much more traditionalist, I guess.
Yeah, sure. And I think there's a lot to be learned from it. I mean, I'm certainly learning from it as somebody in the entire opposite camp. That's just, you were saying you can't polish a turd, but I'm just throwing turds at the wall just to see what sticks.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I do get asked a lot, like kind of production sort of stuff, and I'm just not a good person to give. I don't have like a tips or tricks sort of a thing. I'm very open. I'm happy to share with people what I do, but it all comes down to me. If like I have melodies in my head and I put them down and I write them, and and I work that way, sort of a thing. And so when I make those elements come together, my producing cap is pretty easy, so and then I just turn more into an engineer and I'm mixing it, so it's less stuff like that.
Now, it's fascinating that you have this sort of, as you said, a traditionalist point of view or a traditionalist approach to it, because I think it's a really fascinating, as I say, a distinction to make, that you are a songwriter more than anything. And we were talking before about there's a lot to do as a producer these days. You've got to be a mix engineer, you've got to be a sound designer, you've got to be a synth expert, you've got to be able to arrange this type of thing. And it's worth mentioning at this point that back 30, 40 odd years ago, all of these jobs would have been done potentially by separate people.
Yeah, completely. Albeit obviously on different types of projects, we'll probably be talking more bands and artists. But no one had again, that was a career path back then. Did you want to be a singer or a songwriter, or did you want to be an engineer or producer? Bedroom studios weren't a thing. Most people couldn't learn that stuff. If you learned how to become an engineer, it's probably because you A, had the money to own a studio, which wasn't many, or B, you worked in a studio. You worked your way up as a tea making guy up to proper paid engineer or whatever. So that's the thing. Like now it's everyone, you have to do. I mean, you don't have to. There's great people out there that will mix your music, and I have no problem with that. Like, I think I've had someone contacted me recently, actually, and I can't remember who it was. I forget, but someone contacted me recently saying, if you want any of your tracks mixed, let me know. And I think I've only ever had my tracks mixed, as in like given the stems, I think once or twice. There's only one or two songs where I was like, I'm done with this. I can't mix it anymore. Like it's too much of a challenge. And this is quite a long time. Other than that, I'm very stubborn, so I want to do it all myself. But if other people don't want to mix their tracks, I don't think that's a problem. I think the main thing is that you write the music. I think that's the most important part. That's really what to me is the most important thing. More important than like good mixing skills or even good production. I think if it's a good song and you've got good elements, you can, in my opinion, you can definitely have a great song that sounds crap in terms of production, but it's still a great song. But if you have a crap song with amazing production, it's still a crap song, in my opinion. So it's like, it's really the main thing is like, I think is picking them sounds again and having a really good idea, whatever that may be, a good hook, a good bait, good thing. Don't just sit. I'd really dissuade from people just sitting down and think, what shall I do? Let's write a tune. Like, don't do that. Sit down beforehand and think, okay, what's going to be different about this track to other tracks that I've done, or what other tracks other people have done, or how can I make this more interesting for me? Or if I was on the dance floor, what do I want to listen to? Or if I was in a club, whatever, like, just think about it first. Don't just sit down for the fun of writing beats or whatever,
No, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're very. This is one of the places where we're very similar, actually, because I look upon myself as an artist. You look upon yourself as a songwriter. I look upon myself as a storyteller, and that's what
exactly
I try and do with my own tracks. And obviously, with my involvement with our label, with Chapter 24 as well, that has always been a big part of it, like the narrative drive of trying to bring that storytelling and real authentic emotion back into dance music. So it's a huge thing. And I always remember, it was really funny actually, because on the TV here earlier today, Labyrinth was on the TV. And obviously David Bowie, legend that he was, still is and always will be. I always remember he had like a really long gap between some of his albums, and I saw an interview with him, and the journalist said, "So why did it take you so long to write the new album?" And he just looked at the guy and went, "I had nothing to say."
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Like, what else?
Great.
You don't need to know. Yeah, it should be.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, he was granted quite a lot of freedom in the fact that he was awesome and had so many great songs, and he was comfortable enough to take a break. But yeah.
But I'm always saying to people, like even dance producers, I think a lot of dance producers will be far better off actually releasing a little less at higher quality.
That's what I do now. That's what I'm trying to do that more and more, and I have done actually for the last, I don't know, whatever, 4 or 5 years. I do less, and it does work out better. But again, I've gotten myself to this point. I'm not saying, I don't think that's a good advice for people starting out. But the real advice there is definitely, it's like, I think you've got to say something, because authenticity and emotion comes across in a track, and people will feel it. People will know the difference when you listen to a song. You can hear the difference when someone's had fun making that or not. Like, it's obvious. Like, you can hear it, I think. So,
no, totally.
I think
totally. 100%. So just to sort of round off on the track, really, and before we move on to some questions that we've had submitted by our members previously.
Yep.
In terms of mix down, like, what's your... I mean, obviously, we've been speaking a bit about it, and we know that you mix your tracks down in the vast majority of times. So how do you go about it in terms of your approach? Are there specific thoughts that you have about it, a specific way of doing it? What does the mix down look like for you?
This is it. I literally work... I do it in the same session. I do it as I go along. I can't... I'm very... I get really hung up if I'm right. I do everything as I go along, because I can't progress until I've actually gotten the track already sounding the way I want it to sound, So I don't just... I don't kind of like, how to say, I don't write like a demo version first, I guess I'm thinking in the songwriter sense again, but I'll do it as I go along, because this kind of production plays such an integral part of how the song's going to sound, how it's going to mix, sort of a thing, and how you choose the next sounds that you're going to do. I can't put in a bass sound on top of a bunch of drums that sound rubbish. You know what I mean? Because you've got to get the drums sounding right first, or whatever. Yeah. know that then when you do put the bass in, you know that you only have to worry about choosing the right bass. Otherwise, you could choose the wrong bass, which works with the bad drums, and then once you make the drums good again, you then get, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I mix everything as I go along, and that's right down to levels. That's right down to editing, getting rid of any little problems that you might hear, or little sounds or whatever. And I don't mix into a different session. I'll master, but that's just fake mastering for me to play out the tracks in a club. You know?
Yeah. So you have somebody else master your tracks
Every time, if they're released, yeah. But if it's stuff that I'm just playing out, you know, just DJ sort of stuff, I master it, and it's pretty close, to be honest. It really is. Like, it's only a few times when I've really had problems, and I've sort of had to work with a mastering engineer and sort of say, can you sort this out, please? And I've sort of said to them, what's the problem? And they have, and they've saved me. But most of the time, yeah, it's pretty good. And, you know, and I'm sure you've sort of told a lot of people this before, but that whole thing of like gain staging and watching levels and all that stuff, like, we all get told it a 1,000 times, but it's so true. You know, if you start off clean and continue all the way through with a good sort of structure and not having too many plugins, and just, you know, simple is better, and it really helps. And if you're just always conscious of those kind of things, of like making sure you're not clipping in any channel and grouping things correctly and not doing any weird sort of stuff, it just makes it all easier. You know, you'll end up on top at the end, and from that point of view, you don't need to do much at the end. You know, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I mastered this, you know, like as a fake master or whatever, and played it out, and all of us played it out, Lee and everyone who had the copy of the track, and it, you know, sounds great. It sounds completely great, and I'm pretty sure I probably used a multi-band compressor, some EQ, and a limiter, and that'd be it. So most of the sound, I mean, you can hear it when I'm playing this track, like it's you know,
it's clean as a whistle, mate. It really is.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like I do it as I go along, sort of thing, you know.
No, very much so, and it tells. It's, you know, the feeling of spaciousness in the track, like in general, because you've used so few elements.
Yeah.
And the elements that you have used, they don't take up too much space, and they don't outlast or outstay their welcome too much either, which I think is a huge point.
Yeah. I mean, this track, there's other tracks which I've done where the drums could be like not 20, so like 2 times as busy, or 2 times, you know, as many channels. I like a lot. I know you've told me this before, like you liked my my Coccoon album, Her Future Ghost, the track Her Future Ghost, because of all of the kind of what do you call it, like the little intricacies or whatever, the little details and stuff. You know? And I love doing those kind of things, but that can get quite problematic when mixing, because you've got a lot of different sounds to deal with, but it's kind of like wrestling with all of them to kind of like chip away at them until they kind of fit in their right place. And as long as they have their reason why they're there, and you're not just throwing a lot of stuff together, then you can kind of, you know, you eventually kind of do it. And that just comes with practice and time, and that's something that I just kind of have worked out how to do, you know.
Yeah, totally. And again, I remember, like, I came down to your place for a couple of days to hang out. And it was so funny because, like, we were going through like sessions and stuff, pretty much the same as what we're doing now, just with nobody else, not with 200 people watching, right? Yeah. But the funny thing was, I remember being like, I always call it like I was disappointingly impressed. And I was like, why? Is that it? Like, is that it?
Yeah.
Really? And I was like, wow, that's so amazing. Because, like, again, another thing I always say to people is like, when you hear something that you absolutely love, that blows you away, that really impresses you, the human, like, I don't know whether it's like the reptilian brain, it has this capacity to like step in and say, well, if you love this must mean it was incredibly complicated.
Personally, yeah, exactly. You definitely think it's much more going on as well. Your mind's filling in the blanks that unnecessarily, you know, like you start to think, oh my god, I bet that, you know, I do that even myself. Like, I listen to tracks, I'm like, I bet that person used that really expensive synth, and I bet they have like 100 channels, and then, you know, I get that a lot, because, you know, when I've remixed so many incredible artists over the years, and they send me their stuff, and I'm only ever really remixing people that I respect and love, and you know, a friend whatever, and they're all great producers, and it's the same thing. And I get sent the parts, and I'm like, oh, it's that good. It's just, really simple. It's really good parts, and it's the same thing. You always think that there's much more going on, but there's not. But it comes down to that they've written a good song, and that's really what it is. It's like placement and like good parts and whatnot, good elements and everything. So
no, that's what it's about. So yeah, we're going to move on to questions now from our NYT AAA members who supplied us with some phenomenal questions. And looking at a few of them now, I think we've kind of answered some of them through the course of the call, which is always going to be the case. But in terms of where we're going next, and let's just get this right. There you go. First
do
of all,
stop sharing, or do I need to still share?
No, that's fine. That's fine. We can do that. That we can just go back to a regular camera. That's fine.
I think yes. I mean, if I need to answer something in
we can always move it back to a screen share. That's fine. So, when writing, do you write with a particular label in mind, or do you just write and then once finished think of a suitable label?
Half and half. I think sometimes I write with a particular label in mind. I think more now than ever, but because of working with All Day Dream and Lee and and Sebastian Ledger and everyone and all of these kind of guys, but I do it. I guess I do it more as an inspiration sort of a thing, and it's something that I'm now that I'm in, because I'm in this sort of place. I'm very comfortable with this kind of sound, and I have a very wide scope of what I think fits into those kind of labels. I might write those kind of tracks, send it off, and they may not like it, but that doesn't matter. But I don't. I don't. How do I say it? Like I'll start off as a loose inspiration, let's say, or as a loose idea to write something for one of the labels. But after a while, it just writes itself, and I don't end up thinking, oh, it's got to have that right synth sound. Otherwise, maybe a DJ won't play it or something. I just get on and do my thing.
Yeah, totally. I think that's really healthy because I've said this a lot, and I've been on record as saying this a lot. Where we listen to a lot of demos for Chapter 24. And a lot of label managers say this to me as well, where, a lot of people will send demos in and they say, like, we've specifically written this track for you and for this label. And it's a bit weird because it's like it's somebody you've never met.
Yeah.
And you've basically got someone in a studio essentially trying to second guess your taste while doing almost like a tribute version of a track that's already been released on the label. And it never comes out. Exactly. And it never comes out very well. Whereas, what you're talking about is it's almost like using like a reference track in a way where it's like I'm using the style of this label as almost like a jumping off point, like a kind of a signpost towards where I want to be for inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, there's not... It's different for me now because of, the sort of labels and the artists that I'm working with and like collaborating with and everything, because we're all kind of like in a similar sort of family, and you can see how a lot of tracks can transfer onto other labels or whatever, so it's a little bit different. So it's not so imperative that I start to think, oh, I've got to write some tracks for All Day Dream or something. It doesn't really matter. Once I write those tracks, I'll write them and I send them to Lee, and I send everything to Lee anyway, whether it's coming out on other labels, but it doesn't really matter that way. And and that's the other big, going back to what you said about people sending stuff to Chapter 24, like that in that scenario, the biggest problem is like, let's say for example someone really wanted to be on All Day Dream, and if they wrote a track that sounded just like me or Sebastian Ledger or something, I don't think Lee would want to sign it, because he's like, well, I've already got the Sebastian Ledger. Why do I want someone sounding like Sebastian? You know what I mean? Like, so people need to think like that, and it's like, just kind of find your own sort of sound. Definitely draw inspiration from everyone, and but yeah, like it's not a good idea to sort of do homage and then send it to that label. I don't think so, or at least don't tell them. Just they should just send you stuff to Chapter 24 and just say, here's a track, have a listen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's when homage turns into fromage, as I like to say. Which is about the extent of my French, if I'm being completely honest.
All right, fair enough.
But there you go. I'm from Liverpool, mate, so I can barely speak English, never mind anything else. I nearly brought an interpreter in for tonight.
I don't speak French that well, so surely you can understand my English.
Well, yeah, you're all right. You're all right. You're not bad. Okay, so how do you personally decide if a track is finished?
I think most of the time I think it goes back to, again, like I usually have very strong ideas of, even right from the very beginning, once the track starts to be formed, of where I want that track to be and what I want it to do. My mind races really quickly, so it's like I'll start, a bunch of loops, a bunch of sounds, and I'll very quickly be like, okay, I know exactly what this track wants, and it would be really good if it does that. I definitely want it to do that part. Oh, that bit sounds good on its own, and then that's already in my head, and then it takes me a long time to get to that point, but I already know what it's about, and so it's kind of like a checklist, and I write that most of the time. I write it down, and I'm like, I want this track to do this, 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 and this, and this, and then I do it, and then if it works, it works. If not all of them work, but that's it, and then you just listen through, and then I again, like, technically I would, I could, as you said, like, play them out, but I don't like to. So I know when a track's finished. I know from, as obviously as being a DJ and doing this for a long time, I just know. I just know when it's done, because I have a really high standard that I want this track to reach that level that and the goals that I'd sort of set out to do,
Yeah, totally. And it's the same for me as well, because it took me, like, before my first release, it took me like 3 years to finish a track for the first time.
Yeah.
And then after I finished that and I decided that was what finished looked like for me, like the next week after it taking me that long to get one to my standard, I got asked to do a remix, and I knocked the remix out in like 24 hours.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that, and I've done that sometimes. It's like self-confidence is really a lot of to do with being able to finish music. If you can't finish it, there might be something either A, wrong with a track, or B, there might be something wrong with your kind of like, I'm talking from self-experience here, is that like sometimes I can't progress any songs and I can't progress any tracks because I'm just kind of like, don't know what I want. I don't know. I kind of, I think I could do that. And, I'm all just a little bit milling around, not really doing anything. And sometimes if you go back to, like, if you have a track that you finished already, or that you go back to one of your own tracks and listen through to it and be like, actually, how did I do that? And learn from yourself sometimes, and be kind of like, actually, that was a good track. If if you've done a track of your own, you'd be like, that's a good track. How did I do that? Oh, okay, yeah. Actually, I could do that on this new one. And, and he kind of spurs you along sometimes. Sometimes I think, that's helped me sometimes. It might sound strange, but it's sometimes I've just sort of gone back over my old stuff and been like, and that kind of gives me confidence. I'm like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can do this thing. It's a strange kind of thing. That's what I find anyway.
No, it is, because you become oddly detached to your own music a lot of the time, I find. And, even like listening to my Bedrock release last year, it's like at times...
It was ages away, wasn't it? Like, yeah, time's gone. Like, you've done so much in between. And also, that was when it was released. Like, you wrote that
the year before.
Further, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. And like, a lot's happened since then. And we're like prone to just putting it in the drawer, signed, done. Onto the next, aren't we? As most people are, who's creative, like always looking ahead. So, yeah, it's understandable.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
I always end up like reopening the sessions and going through stuff again. It's like, oh, that's how I did that. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you don't. Your brain doesn't store all of that unless you're really capable of storing all of that kind of information. But it's interesting to get over it. So,
or you're Sebastian Ledger, one of the two.
Seb's just like, he knows exactly what he's doing. He pretends he doesn't.
He's one of those kids that, when you went to school, he always denied that he revised for his exams and then got straight A's.
I don't know if he got straight A's or not. We'll have to ask him.
Well, because he just makes it look so effortless, doesn't he? Because he's just so bloody French, isn't he?
No, but the thing is like, me and Seb are quite similar, I think. We recently did a couple of tracks together, but on a distance. Like, we sort of shared the parts back and forth, sort of thing, and co-wrote some tracks. And it was so easy to work with him because we both, I think the same way. We don't. we know exactly what we want. We're quite simplistic, I guess, and we don't like over clutter stuff, and we're both very kind of like know what creates a good song, and its elements and stuff, and so when we all worked together, it was so easy. It was fun, and it was kind of a Frankenstein kind of way we worked. I won't get into it, but it was interesting. But it was, but we were both very like keen to sort of like get the thing moving along, and it was super fun, and yeah, Seb's massively someone to learn from. I think
he's incredible, and he's one of the scene's great characters as well. Like, he just makes me laugh so much. I love him to bits. Like,
totally.
Yeah, he's great. So, what is the number one thing you wished you'd learned earlier in your career?
How to produce. I didn't actually. This is funny because that reminds me of a conversation me and Seb actually had not too long ago. We were actually the Ibiza gig that we saw you at. We went up for dinner beforehand, and the promoter kind of asked us the same question. I think it was, or we both said the same thing. If I remember rightly, was that neither of us knew what we were doing back then. Like back when we started, neither of us knew really what we were doing, and we were learning as we went along. And even it's only now within like I don't know the last 4 or 5 years or something that I'm confident enough that I can say I can produce music and I know what I'm doing. Before I didn't know what I was doing because I was given a computer and software, not literally, but like I had a computer and a software and I was just trying to produce kind of music and stuff, and there wasn't YouTube videos, there wasn't any of this tutorials online, there wasn't any kind of stuff. I would have to find it out myself. By when I first started doing my releases or something, delivering masters that were like in the red and stuff, pre-masters and stuff, and them saying it's too hot, and I'm like, what do you mean? What does that mean? Like I'm working out everything, like you slowly have to work it out. So what I wish I knew was really learning the basics and learning from. That was the question, right? That was the question. Yeah. I think really learning, knowing the basics and everything. I came from a musicianship point of view, but not a producing point of view. So I think I think that's what you can definitely do nowadays, is learn the basics and learn like good mixing techniques and just simple stuff that will really make your life much easier.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was brevity basically more than anything, because I remember getting my first track signed and the feedback was, "This is brilliant, but it's about 5.5 minutes too long, mate. Can you cut it down?" It was like 13.5 minutes long. It was ridiculous. Wow. Like,
you're a Villalobos fan or something, or what?
Well, no, I think I was halfway towards being Goldie, and right now a long track's about my mum.
Oh, right, cool.
One of them. But no, it was just again, because you don't know what, as it goes back to the whole finishing thing, doesn't it? If you don't know what finished looks like, you just try and cram everything in.
Yeah, I think that's why obviously with this music, being a DJ is like so kind of not imperative, but it's so helpful because again, I go back to my friend Justin Machakos, who in New York where I produce with. He's always sort of like said to me, like, he's like structuring tracks. He's like, I have no idea. He structures them so that he can, because he only plays live. So he structures his tracks as elements and that he plays live, and that works perfectly for him. But then when it comes to him releasing his music, he's always like, dude, I'm not a DJ. I don't know what people want and what they want. So he doesn't know what that finished kind of product kind of is sometimes also. And you don't, like if you just, you don't. But the thing is like there's so much resources out there to tell you what it is, and the main thing is like listen to other tracks, work it out. There's so many times when I've taken a track that I like, I've cut it up and I've worked out when does that element come in, how many times does that element come back in, or when's the breakdown, how many bars is that, stuff like that. I've done that loads. Like, I like doing that. It's interesting to sort of see, especially on tracks which are interesting structures or something. It's fun to kind of see that stuff.
No, totally, absolutely. So this is a good one. Do you have any particular routines that you stick to for better workflow and focus? And I suppose this actually extends into another thing of like, do you produce every day? Do you have like a routine or like a kind of a schedule that you stick to help you with organization, focus, creativity, flow?
I can't say that I have a complete routine. I definitely prefer working daytime than nighttime. I'm a kind of a more like a get up early and have daylight and stuff. I guess it's dark now, but behind me, you could probably see earlier was like a really nice space with my studio. It's upstairs and nice skylight, so I like that. I don't stick to a routine that I do produce probably every day. How many hours? That depends. It could be all day. It could be 30 minutes. Depends on if I'm inspired or not. Getting inspired and getting in the right frame of mind is the hardest thing that I find to do, but I have lots of different tips and tricks for that, which work for me. I don't know if they can be transferable to other people, but it could be stuff like listening to a mix or something, or listening to other tracks, or going for a walk, going out exercising, or going for a swim. Could be anything, but I always make sure that pretty much, like I said before, I'm kind of a mad scientist who stays in the studio pretty much day to day. I'm never too far away from the studio, because when that inspiration kind of hits, I just want to jump right back in, so it's kind of that's my main thing really, is I never leave the studio kind of too much. Did
you write on the road when you're on tour a lot, or is it
I do now. Yeah, the laptops are so fantastic now, like they're amazing. I mean, even Light Eyes, the track on the All Day a Dream release, on the same EP as this track. Light Eyes I wrote before Burning Man 2018, and I wrote kind of like half of it at home, then a quarter of it in San Francisco, and then finished the last like 10% actually at Burning Man on my laptop, like just with headphones and like playing around sort of thing, and then played it on Robot Hot, like a couple of days later or whatever, which is fun. So and yeah, I find it really interesting to produce on the road. I could finish that track because I'd already mixed it. Again, this goes in like what I said before. So it was already mixed. All I was adding in the track was like maybe a few more elements, or getting the structure right, etc., etc. So I knew it sounded right as soon as I bounced it. It wasn't really a problem. And so all of the stuff that I do on the road is mostly inspirational, kind of like creative sort of stuff, like come up with new ideas or beats or whatever I want. Just on the plane, I do it a lot. Like the long journey over to America are like 9 to 11 hours sometimes. So it's great fun. And everyone usually goes to sleep if it's an overnight, and no one disturbs you. So I've got like 11 hours just to get on with music. I really enjoy it. It's strange, but I quite like it.
Absolutely. I can totally understand that. Done that myself on many occasions. So going from inspiration to writer's block, how do you work with that? Have you had any experience with it? What's the Tim Green philosophy on when you feel creatively blocked?
Just don't get it. Just don't get writer's block. That's the key. I mean, I had it. I think I had it for quite bad for like a year, and that wasn't like a solid year of not writing. But I had it quite bad once, where I just couldn't write, and I wasn't inspired. I was going through a bit of a transformation, I guess, also of what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. So that was the biggest thing for me. But if and that. I mean, it's psychological, really. Writer's block only is ever psychological. If there's an issue, if you've got writer's block, it's a psychological reason. There's no other reason. So if you've got a really big problem with writer's block, then it's something that maybe you should see a therapist or a psychiatrist or something, because they'll probably be able to work it out better than yourself. I've always been quite good at kind of reading myself and working out what needs to be done, what doesn't, and that's what I've always realized for myself, that when I've had writer's block, even like mini ones or whatever, like for a week I can't write or something, it's because I've got other stuff going on in my head. I've got other things that are bothering me, that are distracting me, that are getting in the way, or something's annoyed me and I haven't dealt with it, or whatever. It could be anything. But you don't realize it, and so you have to kind of work it out. That's to me what I've had when I've had writer's block. And so I'm pretty sure that's what it is for most other people, because music should be fun, it should be easy, it should be free, and it should never be done with, in my opinion, with a serious objective in mind, like got a deadline and you've got to make money, and otherwise, blah blah blah. It's got to be fun. You've got to be free. You've got to enjoy it. And at the end, you should want to share it with people, whether it's one person or whether it's a million people. It doesn't matter, but it should be something that you want to do. So, if you do have writer's block, I'd imagine it's probably something that it's something that you need to sort of like deal with. And so there are lots of things for that, like being healthy, exercising, sleeping well, being happy. All of these sort of things, they help, and like living a good life for yourself is the main sort of thing.
I mean,
and it's different for different people, because there are people that smoke like weed or whatever, and they write amazingly. If they don't smoke weed, then they can't write, and it's crazy. Like, I couldn't imagine that. Like, that just doesn't work for me. But whatever works for the person is the, I think is the sort of thing that you should be able to find, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that question alone and where we've just gone with it is almost like an episode of a podcast on its own.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, and for all of that, you go into mental health, you go into physical health, and everything. It all fuels back into you, I think, and I know for myself that, like, I try and be the best kind of like person that I can be. I'm not saying I am, but I try to be, and that just makes me feel better and like sort of think better and live better and everything better, and it always is to fuel back into me doing music. Like, I do all of that. I try and make myself the optimum as I can, so that I don't have any issues of writer's block. I don't have any issues when I get back into the studio. I can just get on with it and feel free and ready to kind of create, because I have to. I wouldn't be able to live without kind of doing music,
Yeah, 100%. And you're speaking to the ethos behind what we try and do here at MYT as well, which is to provide something that's completely 360 and holistic, and it takes in all aspects of everything that you've just spoken about, from mental and physical health to the production stuff, the business aspect, everything all wrapped into one package. And we think it's a really, really essential part of it, and it's something that the education space in this industry, unfortunately, it kind of overlooks to an extent.
Totally. And and I think it's slowly starting to, thankfully, people are taking note of it more. People like yourself and a lot of others. You see it's becoming a discussion a lot more on all these different kind of topics, which is so important.
Yeah. You just don't have to be a nutter like me and jump in a cold shower every day. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, but that's good for you as well.
Oh, it's great. I love it.
It's great.
Love it. I ran 10k today and then jumped in a nice cold shower. It's like,
that's what you need. That's what the body needs. It needs for the blood circulation and everything. It's great for it.
Yeah, totally. Enama's got a question. Can you talk just a tiny bit about your decision to use the Apia alias for heavier techno stuff? Especially had done some of this in the past as Tim Green. So yeah, it's interesting. You're still doing the heavier stuff, mate, yeah?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I've always been against doing an alias, and I've always sort of thought, because I've always been like, whatever I write, it's me. Like, I don't feel like I need to hide behind someone. It's not like an alter ego where I'm like, today I'm going to be Apia, and I'm going to wear a mask or a cape or something, I'm not like some secret
I'd like to see it, but I'll keep that thought to myself.
Yeah, mate, keep those thoughts to yourself. I'll show you afterwards. I'll show you the cape afterwards.
I'll stop filming.
But so I've always been a little bit like against the idea of doing it, but then I found more and more that I spoke to people that I felt like it was becoming more and more of an issue of me jumping around different sort of sounds, and especially when it was, let's say, talking to fans or people listening to my music or promoters who are booking me for club nights or whatever. People weren't always sure what they were going to get, and I was getting booked on certain nights where I think it was kind of like a little bit like, okay, this isn't exactly my kind of thing. But I can understand why I'm here, probably because of my past releases, etc., and everything else. So I think the alias really came more as a way to, I think, to make it simpler for myself and others. I think myself as well, writing music, because I wanted to be able to, I just want people to know that kind of a sound now will be under the Appear alias. And I guess it's probably a heavier sound. It's probably the easier way I can sort of say it. Like everything under Tim Green is probably going to be more, a lighter sort of a more melodic, I guess. I mean, I think the Appear sound's probably still a melodic, I guess. I don't know. It's really hard for me to explain. I know what it sounds like in my head. And, and I don't want to say like it's going to be like techno is Appear and then house is Tim Green, because that's so basic. And I don't think I've never really like written proper techno music. I've always been kind of like the black sheep, I guess, of techno, and never really fit in. But and then the same with the house music. I'm not like a full on house, artist sort of a thing. I come from my world, which is, jazz and rock and everything else. But I love this music a lot, and I like that you can express in it. So yeah, the Appear alias is really a sort of to divide the kind of sound that I'm doing, and I'm going to do more. I will do more, but it just I take quite a long time to finish songs that I'm happy with. So I am going to do more Appear productions. I've got lots of ideas on the go. I just need to get around to sort of finishing them and then releasing them. But I will do more of them. I really like it, and I don't want to stop doing let's more like the more techno-ish kind of sort of stuff that I do. I love it, and I'm not ashamed of all the stuff I've done in the past, but yeah, I just think I just trying to make it more digestible, I guess, for people to understand what they're going to expect when the music comes out.
No, sure. And I was such a big, fan of your other project as well, the Invisible Minds project.
Yeah, man.
Which was great. And is there any more of that happening in the future?
No, there will be, but not right now. That takes a lot of effort, that's kind of that almost is like a proper alter ego, I guess, because that's me writing band music for a band that doesn't exist, and I have to sort of like create a band with musicians and stuff, and I'm definitely going to jump back into that, but it's I'm not working on it at the moment. Right now my headspace is strictly kind of electronic and dance floor kind of music, I guess.
I know how it is, because it's completely the opposite for me at the moment. I mean, I am finishing some dance tracks at the moment, but where I'm moving because of a lot of work that I'm doing in the immersive audio space, it's forced me into a situation where it's like, okay, to make the most of this technology, I'm now undergoing a transformation in the opposite direction towards becoming more of a live artist. And you're totally right. Those mindsets are 180 degrees almost in the opposite direction from one another.
That's it. That's the hard kind of thing. It's like I felt like I was, splitting my soul when I was working on those different projects, because at one point I did the Coccoon album, techno, and then I did the Invisible Minds album, and they came out in the same year, and it was kind of like different projects going on at once, and it's a lot because it's all on my kind of shoulders, and it was all coming from my brain, and it was just a lot. It's hard to jump between the two. Really is hard. But so the Appear thing and Tim Green, they're much closer. They're totally far away.
Yeah, because I know how much work and effort and blood, sweat and tears you put into Invisible Minds. It really showed, man. It really showed. So, I'm glad it's going to make a comeback at some stage in the future. But
it will. I think it might morph into something different. Because it has to. It's it's a project that I love and did really well, and the lead track, Yo Melee, I don't know if you saw, but was on Wagamama, the latest TV advert as well. Pretty cool. It gets really good feedback, but like anything, I need to be doing more and more and more and more and more. If you want that project to be successful, you have to have constant sort of music coming out. Like anything, to be consistent, and you need to be in the sort of the main focus of the world, not the world, but you know what I mean, like just you need consistent kind of stuff happening so people take note, and I don't have the time to do that, because it's all coming from me, so it's something on the shelf that I'll get back down eventually.
No, perfect. Final question, any other upcoming releases that we have to look forward to, my good friend?
Yes, so next is what month are we in right now?
April.
The end of this month is I've got a remix coming out on Audio Dream for an artist called Slow Hearts. And after that, what are we in April, May? Yeah, in the end of May or beginning of June, I've got a release coming out on Sebastian Ledger's label, Lost Miracle.
Nice.
One track from me, and then another track, which is a collaboration between me and him. So that's one of our collaborations. We've done another collaboration, which actually we need to talk about and work out what we're going to do with it, because we don't know yet. And then later on in the year, I've also got, what else have I got coming up? I don't know when they're coming out, but I've got more tracks coming out with Izevsky and Gorge on Audio Dream and Shanti Radio Moscow, or the new label. I'm not sure which label it's coming out on yet. I think they've just started a new label as well. Yeah. Got a release. Actually, I've got 2 releases with them. Oh, I don't know. I've got a lot of music coming out. A lot. And I can't remember everything that's coming out because I'm kind of like what we said before. Like, I've got lots of stuff. I've got something else happening with Lee later in the year, but I'm moving so quickly and working on so much more new music. That's kind of like what's in my mind. So I can't remember. But yeah, the immediate things are, yes, I've got a remix on Audio Dream coming up at the end of this month, and then the Lost Miracles with Sebastian after that.
Amazing. Well, we look forward to them, Tim. And, we've actually been going now for just over 2 hours, believe it or not. So, these things kind of just flow, don't they, really? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope any of this was helpful or useful. I always feel like it's... I'm not informative enough, or maybe I'm not, I'm not able to give enough information, but I hope it's helped. And,
totally the opposite, mate. Totally the opposite. I mean, just the comments that have been flowing in is just like, this is golden advice. And,
good.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's like, we think, well, you're interested in like a shaker. Do you know what I mean? But like to some people, it's just like it's absolutely that nugget of information that they've always wanted. Right. So it's always surprised. The most mundane and basic things are, often the most valuable to a lot of people. So I wouldn't downplay yourself at all, mate. You're absolutely fantastic.
No, but it's like what you said. It's not downplaying me. It's just more kind of like I'm not sure what parts are interesting or not. So I'm glad that people have been able to take whatever they can and. Get what they want from it, which is cool. So
no, I really appreciate it, and to be honest with you, if I had a bottle of wine next to me, mate, I'd be cracking on all night with you. Do you know what I mean? This is what just happens when we get together, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Progressively get more drunk, which would be even better.
Yeah, and then it'd get progressively, like the jokes would get progressively more than appropriate.
100%.
We are after 9 o'clock in the UK, so we probably get away with it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and you're a Scouser, so it's definitely going to get worse.
Mate, that's my stock and trade, mate. I'm here to lower the tone. You're here to lift it up,
Make it nicer.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. But I can't thank you enough for this, Tim. This is fantastic.
I really enjoyed it, man.
No, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone to watching as well.
Totally. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and bearing with me.
Oh, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Again, it's like we said when we first decided to do this. It's like, it's going to be great because we just get to spend an evening together, which we wouldn't do under normal circumstances.
Exactly. Yeah, and we've been talking about doing this for a long time now, so I'm glad that, with obvious circumstances going on in the world right now, this is proven to be the perfect time to sort of get this done, which is nice. So,
and there's a lot more to come from us as well, where MYT is concerned, and we will be letting people know about that when the time is right.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah.
And as I said, thank you very much to everyone for joining us this evening. Tim's EP is out on All Day I Dream at the moment, Vacation to Life, and also he's got these lovely remixes and this Lost Miracle release coming out, and a lot of new music coming as well. We've got a lot of stuff coming as well over at MYT. We've got a lot of masterclasses. We've actually got a live track feedback on the 19th of April. So you can send your tracks in to me and I will give you feedback on them live. And it'll be the same kind of situation like this across Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, etc. And we'll have potentially a special guest joining us who may or may not be fairly well known in the industry, who could give us a bit of extra feedback. So tune in for that all the information on that is on our Facebook page. And if you like more stuff like this, we've got stuff happening every week, and we've got lots of online courses over at www.transition.studio. So thanks once again, guys. This will be up across all of the channels afterwards, so you can watch it for free as many times as you like, and you can get to spend many, many hours of your lockdown with me and Tim Green.
That sounds terrible.
Sounds awful. Two people you wouldn't want to be locked in with for extended periods of time. All right, guys. Well, we shall leave it there for this evening. Thanks once again, Tim, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, mate. Cheers,
guys.
Cheers.
Bye.